Hi, everyone. Welcome to another session of the Heading Health Speaker Series. So in our speaker series, every month we really focus on something that is relevant to our communities, the patients that we serve. Just a little bit about Heading Health. We are a virtual mental health treatment group where we provide telepsychiatry, teletherapy, and then some specialized treatments in our center. So today we are going to be talking to two of our amazing therapists who are veterans themselves or have worked in the military with families, with the veterans, because today is Veterans Day. And so we really want to highlight some of the difficulties and challenges and also special sauce that the military brings to our civilian life. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I would love to hear a little bit from you. Teressa Carter, she is a therapist who actually comes to us from having worked in that capacity with the military. And Femi Olukoya, he is a veteran from the Navy. So thank you guys so much for coming. And Teressa, will you tell us a little bit about your background and working with veterans, and then also why you are so passionate about helping veterans integrate into civilian life?
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me, Sally. So, again, my name is Teressa. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been practicing therapy for approximately 13 years. Native of Baltimore, Maryland. I live in Texas now. The reason why I am so passionate about working with active duty service members and veterans is because I got to witness firsthand working with them in embedded positions on the base, on the unit, just how much they serve outside of even combat, how much they serve just at their duty stations. And I admire their resiliency, their strength, and their sacrifice. Not only theirs, but their family members, their spouses, their children. My father was in the Army. My grandfather was in the Army. My partner has served in the Marine Corps. My son is a dependent of a Marine Corps veteran. So this is a very personal subject for me. This is very heartfelt for me. And so, I want to do all that I can to help this community and help this population. I've actually worked with active duty service members and veterans of both the Marine Corps, Army. I've worked at Camp Lejeune, Cherry Point, Fort Sill. I've worked at Shepherd Air Force Base, Little Rock Air Force Base. And so I've had an array of experiences working with the different branches. And so, again, this is really, really heartfelt, and I'm glad to be giving something back to this community today. Thank you.
Yay, thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. And you have such an amazing background from so many different perspectives. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Femi, welcome.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you for having me. I am Femi Olukoya. I am a LPC licensed professional counselor. Uh, my background is basically going into the Navy at the age of 17. I joined right out of high school, and after I graduated from boot camp, that morning 9/11 happened. So I was really introduced to what the military was really all about when it comes to, being on deployment. I was supposed to go to Hawaii, but they sent me straight to the Gulf. Uh,
Different sand. That was a very different experience for sure.
there. So I was a bosun's mate, U.S. Navy CVN 68 on an aircraft carrier. And I was also a SAR swimmer. So TAD SAR swimmer, temporarily assigned duty. So basically at that time, there's a lot of my shipmates that couldn't really handle being out to sea that long, because we were out like 9 months at a time. And they didn't have any control about what was going on back at home, the uncertainty about what was going to be seen, and battle stations like every other day. So a lot of people kind of decided to like maybe jump off the bow of the ship. They couldn't really handle. There was a lot of suicidal ideations and suicidal attempts, and as a
Really?
sergeant, yeah, we would basically go into the water, get them out, and debrief with them, like, hey, what's going on? Why are you feeling this way? And then send them to the ship's chaplain. So I did that for about 5 years, and after I got discharged honorably, I kind of got intrigued in mental health because it was amazing to me the elasticity of like the brain and emotions, where somebody can have a paper cut and it could be the end of the world, and somebody could experience major trauma and just shrug it off like it wasn't anything. So that's really what intrigued me, and I've been serving veterans ever since when it comes to mental health, seeing how they can transition from military lifestyle to civilian lifestyle.
Mm.
We can all agree that resources are very scarce, or they are there, but the information isn't given. So that's what I really strive to help my shipmates or my clients that are veterans, you know, helping them understand that they're not alone, and there's a way to actually transition in a healthy manner with the support that we can provide them.
I love that. That's actually so much of what you said really resonates. So I am a civilian, having never been in the military. And so I don't really fully understand that the what the difficulties with transitioning from military life into civilian life. And so that's really what I would love for you to expand upon. Femi, maybe you can talk about this from a veteran's perspective, and then Teressa, maybe you can talk about from a family's perspective. But what does that transition look like? What are some of the real difficulties? And then what are some of the surprises, I guess, positive and negative?
Yeah, so I can definitely speak to a certain point. Let's say you spent 5, 6, 20 years in the military doing something specific and you excelled in it. Now you're a captain, or you're a lieutenant, like you worked your way up because that is your craft. And coming out of the military after retiring, get into the civilian world, and they have no use for your skills.
Oh.
Now, because it's not transferable. So it's kind of like starting over again, and that can be very, very emotionally like detrimental, because now you have to find your identity, that you spent so much of your life building, and adjusting to the fluidity of the world, that you live in now, because everything is usually structured in the military. Everything has a purpose, you know, honor, courage, commitment, like leadership, discipline. We can all agree that, being out in the civilian world, not everybody shares the same type of ideal, right? So it's
Oh, yes.
yeah, so so that uncertainty and that tolerance that veterans do not have
Hmm.
has to be adjusted and has to be basically learned.
When you say tolerance, what do you mean? Like tolerance for not having an external structure, or tolerance for different ideals, or both?
Yeah, both. The tolerance for not like because when it comes to structure, that's typically how the military lifestyle flourishes, and it there has to be some type of fluidity coming into the civilian world, and when you can't adjust, it's really hard. And when it comes to actually having a conversation with people outside of the military that don't understand what you've gone through, that don't understand the trauma, and like it's very, how do I put it, kind of like simplifying it in a way where it's like just like, I don't know, that's the word I'm trying to find. It's not a big deal. It's to
Hmm.
them, right? Where like when the civilians are, oh, that's not a big deal. Like why are you so headstrong, or why why do you like things a certain way? The understanding and the support isn't there. So whenever they're having conversations with people, they kind of lose patience because they feel like they're not understood. And that goes into therapy as well. Like when veterans like seek therapy, they look for therapists that can actually understand their lifestyle, their language, and how they express themselves. And when they say certain things, they don't want to scare civilians of what they've seen or how they've lived and how they think, right? So that they have to find a safe place where they can actually express themselves without being judged. And that's where that tolerance lies.
Yeah, so interesting. Well, and we're all looking for places where we feel like we could fit in. And I think that the chasm between civilian life and military life, both from a structural perspective and then also what you have seen, I could see how that would be very much like, it would feel very foreign coming from the military to a civilian life. So I could see how that would be really, really hard. Yeah. What about from your perspective, Teressa? Like how does that same type of scenario play out from a military wife with military kids?
So first, Femi, I just want to say excellent points. It's something he hit on to just make me think about, even with the spouses and the children, when you are living the active duty military lifestyle, you are in a separate world. Everything that you need is on base. Everything that you should need is promoted to be on base, from the schools, from your grocery market to family support services. Everything is on base. And once you transition, and the whole family transitions, once you transition out of the active duty status into the veteran status, now you are having to maneuver and operate and get resources in a big civilian world where you have little training. And like Femi said, you could have been 10, 20 years in. Your family is in too. This is all that they know. So I also like to tell people, just to give you a more just kind of real life experience. Imagine, Sally, you've been in civilian career your whole life, civilian world, and then tomorrow, and I say, well, you know what? You've graduated, your time in civilian life is over. Now it's time to do military life. And to flip it, you know what I mean? And once you get on base, to find where things are, the jargons, the language, totally different mindset, totally different culture. This is what our veterans face and their
See,
families.
I can't even conceptualize it. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, like I think
Yes,
I would know what to do. Oh, well, I would just check off where I'm going to live and check off this and check off that. But really, from what you're saying, like it's a completely different world.
completely. Processes are different, rules are different, um, behavior, um, everything is different. Some of the things that, we talked about before, some of the things that you may do in the civilian life that may be, okay, looked down upon, but in military life, it can be a crime.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
A totally different lifestyle. And so I think what we could do as far as spouses and children, we should have a program. We should have some integrative services where once that active duty service member comes out and he is now a veteran, just wrap around support services for him, the spouse, and the children, making sure that whatever services they were getting on base and that they need, there is a direct line for them to get those services in the civilian life. That takes the stress off the parents, the kids, and the veteran.
Mm-hmm. So are there services like that either within the military structure or even like outside the military structure? And how do people find them?
Femi, I don't know if you want to take this, but I'll be happy to take this first. And when you're in the military life, everything's on base. Everything is at what they call the FAP office, the family advocacy program. Everything is in one place. When you come into civilian world, you have government offices, public offices separated by every single thing at different places. And so, yes, the military does a transition for the veteran. They actually have a whole program on how to transition, and it's a real introductory transition into civilian life. But for the whole family, there's not that much wraparound and direct services or direct connections to the civilian resources you may need within your community. So part of us helping the whole family, not just the veteran, the whole family is once they transition, people like the social workers, the educators, people like the VA should make sure that that's a smooth transition. What those processes look like, where these buildings are. I wish we could give them a packet, like when they come out, this is what you were receiving, this is where you go to continue this process. So to make it smooth line for them and take the stress off would be great. Another thing I want to say too is that even for the veteran, mental health services look way different when you're active duty versus when you're civilian. There is not this high level of confidentiality as you would have in a civilian mental health. So transitioning, yes. So transitioning and explaining that to the veteran, transitioning and getting them accustomed to what civilian mental health looks like versus military mental health is a key important too, because a lot of us know that PTSD is common in the military, but it's not just common for those who served, even in the lifestyle, because it's transition. And sometimes rapid, drastic transition, depending on where you grew up, where you're from, and going into the military lifestyle, can be an adjustment issue as well. It can be traumatic. So it's just a whole lifestyle, and getting us prepared to help them transition and making it comfortable in a safe space is just as important.
That's so interesting. You bring up so many really, really great points. Do you have anything to add to that, Femi?
Yeah, I do. I mean,
Speak up.
I was smiling because I feel like Teresa gave a diplomatic, nice way of saying like,
Oh, tell it to us for real. Come on.
look. So basically, the support is there. The support is there. Let me start off by saying that, but you have to go find it. It's not given to you. Like they make that information really scarce. Like, here's a pamphlet. Here, make call this number where you put on hold for like an hour and a half. Uh, treatment in the VA hospital is not the greatest. So there's a lot of frustration there, especially as a veteran myself, right? What I've experienced where I am experiencing like good benefits now, but before I got here, I really had to do my homework. But when she said an introductory, that's exactly what it is. There's just like, hey, this is what it looks like. You could customize it on your own on how to figure out how to get your benefits or how to get your transitioning in, right? You have to be very, very meticulous and take initiative on finding out exactly what benefits that's allotted to you because it's not given to you. They won't go out their way to give you that information. You have to find it. And sometimes it takes veterans years, decades, like to get there, to get to that benefit. A lot of people don't even know in Texas, a lot of people don't even know about the Hazelwood Act. If you're like honorable discharge and you finish your GI Bill, you have 160 credit hours for grad school or whatever you want to do. A lot of people don't know that. I had to find that out on my own, right? So with me, I feel like it could be done a lot better, but it's such the VA and the benefits and everything. It's such a juggernaut to the point where like everything is just textbook at this point. It's not personalized. It's basically, you got to figure it out. Here's the information. And if you have any more questions, I can find out for you, but you're going to have to ask me. That's really my perspective.
So what you say is so interesting, and it really makes me think back to some of our previous conversations around the military mentality And the mentality that has been created by the military from bringing in, and this may be a stereotypical statement, but bringing in a 17-year-old boy like yourself and training them up to be the type of soldier that they want, or military personnel that they want it to be, that the military wants it to be. And that is a man's man who doesn't ask questions. And so I could see how very disorienting it could be. And tell me if this is true or not, but you come from this very structured organization into the wide open world, which you think the wide open world is filled with freedom and wonderful, beautiful things. But for a person who has been kind of created, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but built up to be a certain way, asking questions, being curious, asking things outside the box to get your needs met, has got to be very disorienting.
Yeah, it is, especially when you're trying to find your way in the world that's unfamiliar, right? Because as an adult, this is the first thing that you experience because you've been so, I don't want to say sheltered, but everything is there for you while you're in the military. So there's no need or want for anything. But here you have to, when you get out, you really have to take initiative and figure out what it is, right?
Yes.
And for me, it was really disorienting. I actually had to find myself, like in a way, like, I moved to New York, trying to figure out life, figuring out, and I came back to Houston. Like it took me about 5 years to actually, 5 or 6 years to orient myself back into the civilian way, or, just lifestyle and mentality.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I would think that would be particularly difficult with some of the mental health needs that come from being, I mean, we have been in conflict since 2001, like you said. And so there's lots of PTSD, depression, anxiety, all of the other things. So having to couple stepping into this whole new world, plus having all that extra baggage is very hard. So how do we fix this problem? Like, well, first, let me ask, like, me as a civilian, why should I care about this beyond the idea that, like, you are people, you're going to be your families are going to be part of our society, but why should this be important to me?
I feel like, oh, go ahead.
No, please.
No, I feel like in
Oh.
some form of fashion, like you probably are connected to a veteran. You can have a friend, you can have like, a relative. And also these are the people that you're going to be surrounded by, right? Like this is also your societal members, some PTSD may turn into something else. Like God forbid we have people who lose it and just start like, like they think they're back in like Iraq and they start open fire or all sorts. Like these are the things that we have to look out for. And people commit suicides all the time.
Oh my gosh, the statistics are truly heartbreaking.
Yeah. So not only does it affects you in some way or another, because somebody may feel like while I stood watch while you were sleeping in your bed and you don't appreciate me, you will appreciate me, and then do something major and drastic. You don't know, because the mind is it is such a complex thing that you don't know where it goes, what road it'll take, right? So just like we care about like, civilian like patients and clients, and it's a demographic of its own that hasn't really been seen. It feels like we are seen, but we're not seen. The holidays like grind my gears. Like
You mean Veterans Day, like the one we're celebrating in this talk, right?
No way, yeah. I'm just gonna be honest. Like there's a lot of there's a lot of barbecue going on. There's even a Memorial Day. Like, some people don't know why they celebrate Memorial Day. I've asked people, like, why do we celebrate Memorial Day? Oh,
Hot dogs, of course.
It's very, very disturbing to a certain extent. And, and veterans really take that to heart. like when you think you're doing them a favor, but you're actually making them a little bit more irritable than they usually are, right? By saying you understand, but you're not actually taking the effort to understand and, advocating,
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think your question is important, Sally. Why should civilian communities care? And that's a very personal question for me. And then I was getting a visceral, personal reaction as you guys were talking about it. First is because we should care about this community because this community sacrificed a lot for us, our liberties, to have our civilian lifestyle. And again, it's just not combat. It's just they sacrificed a lot of their own civil liberties, time with their family, their loved ones, their free time, their time to just sit back and chill. They had to always train and be ready and stay ready. And it takes a lot mentally, physically, and emotionally. And we should care because these are our family members, our spouses. This could one day be our children that are grown up and deciding to serve. We want to be able to take care of the community that took care of us. And you work with the civilian, or I'm sorry, you work with a veteran. You may even date a veteran. You're probably next to a veteran some way, somehow. And like Femi said, we don't want to leave anybody behind, especially mental health wise, especially not our veterans. Why should we care? It's because of the suicide rate that you guys just talked about, very high amongst veterans, the PTSD rates, the depression. It's a community that has fallen by the wayside too much, and that we've depended on one sector like the VA to just take care of them, when it's going to take all of us, especially if they were reintegrating back into the civilian life. It takes all of us, not just the VA. And we've had previous discussions before where Femi and I, is like, even working with them, I have a different mindset. I speak different, even working in those environments. And so it was even hard for me to transition back into just full civilian employer life, having worked in an environment 7+ years. I can only imagine what it's like for the active duty service member. And so experiencing it on some lower level myself, I'm like, wow, the need is very important for us to extend a hand. It bothers me to see our veterans having to come back and reintegrate into civilian life and ask so many questions. And what I hear from them is that they feel like people don't care, and they feel like that they're having to beg. When they have to call different numbers, call different people, say what they need, and they should never be put in that position. Have to beg for what they need, especially after they serve.
So something that is kind of occurring to me, and I wonder if this resonates with you guys, is I can totally see a situation where someone leaves the military and comes back to civilian life, and everybody's so happy that they're coming back, and they just expect them to, like, come on, let's take me to school and go get groceries, and there's no, from a civilian perspective, partner perspective, parent perspective, someone who hasn't been over there, it's probably really hard to well, I know, not expect them just to step into regular life. So a couple months ago, I did a speaker series with one of our therapists around grief, and the idea that you grieve things other than just death. And one of the most insidious forms of grief is grief that you can't really talk about or work through, express. And so that is what's really coming up for me when you're talking. You are grieving the life that you left behind, but you're really expected to just be so happy that you're now free, and you're so happy that you're, or free is maybe not the best word, but you're supposed to be so happy that you now can live this regular life. That's got to be really, really hard.
It is. And I don't know if Femi can differ, but I've spoken to a lot of veterans that do grieve and miss the military lifestyle. Look at Femi, smile a little bit. On a lot of levels, they miss the military lifestyle, and coming out and expecting and coming into the more civilian lifestyle, thinking, I don't fit quite here either.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So yes, it's hard. I'll let Femi speak more to that though.
You're muted.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's a bittersweet mixed feeling type of situation for me, right? So it wasn't a good or bad experience. It was an experience, right? And it was one of like
Oh, I think he's
it's one I got it's what that I strive to even improve and be, right? So yes, I do miss and I do grieve certain aspects of the military lifestyle, the stability, the camaraderie, the brotherhood, you know. It's funny because those are one of the relationships that really kind of really stuck, you know, like even if we have different views, like even if we have different political views and stuff like that, it's one of those situations where I don't agree with what you're saying. I don't agree with, you know, what you're doing or whatever and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, our brotherhood takes precedence over our differences, right?
Mhm.
Like it's funny because like I have a friend that I consider a brother that lives like in rural Texas, trucker hat, like just you would never see us together, you know, you would never see anybody like us together, right?
Be like,
Because
how are they friends?
yeah, you know, like John Deere, all that good stuff. And I'm like, you know, this urban guy, but the connection that we have, you know, because we were on the ship together, we fought together, like, you know, he's had my back, and that's somebody that I trust with my life, regardless of how he feels about other things that I care about.
Sure. Yeah.
That's the complexity that I do grieve, that relationship.
Yeah. So we have talked a lot about some of the issues and challenges. I really want to spend some time talking about, like, how do we do better? So we can talk about the issues all day long, but what I really want to know is, how do we do better? How do we as civilians and you as practitioners, how do we engage with the military better? How do we provide better services? And also, I want you both to speak to the military personnel. Why is it so important to seek extra support? I know I asked you like 12 different questions there, so let me start with the first one. How do we do better?
I'm gonna give you first spot at that.
So I would say more advocacy, in a way where you speak up for people who you feel can't really speak for themselves, in a way where they can't really express how we already, like veterans, they already have a hard time expressing how they feel because they've learned to like bottle it up. You don't want to be a liability. So expressing our advocacy and speaking up for them and spotting out things that like, hey, you know, better mental health care, better health care, you know, and just being there and actually listening and taking whatever it is that like veterans are saying, you know, being comfortable with what comes out of our mouths, basically, because it's a different language. it's a different language. And, you know, some people shy away from those kind of conversations that they're comfortable with, and they feel like they don't have anybody to actually express that to. Hence the reason why they search for other veterans. You
Yeah.
know,
If you're not talking about the weather or football, no, thank you. That conversation is not welcome at this party.
yes.
I'm sure that's got to be hard. Yeah. Mhm. What about you, Teressa?
Mine is a twofold. So, in overall civilian life, how we can do better. I agree with Femi, advocacy, understanding, education. Um, I agree with him just taking the time and speaking to a veteran. Let a veteran speak. Let him or her talk, share their experience. It's actually a great compliment to you if they are sharing their experience with you and talking with you. As far as the mental health community, what we could do better for the veterans to better support them is education and advocacy. I think every mental health therapist should have some training, some education on veteran needs, um, good practices and techniques with the veteran community, learning some basic understanding of the military lifestyle, and how to build a rapport with veterans. I
Mhm.
think those are the key things. Building a rapport, if you are a clinician that is seeing veteran clients, building a rapport is one of the first and top priority things you need to do with your clients, making sure that it's a safe space when they come in to speak with you. Let them come in how they are, meaning let them feel comfortable. If they curse, they curse. If they need to yell, understand this is part of the work. This is
Mhm.
part of the healing right here. Come from a place, if you're a clinician, of you have no idea. Start in that vulnerable, authentic place. I have no idea of your experience. I have no idea how that made you feel, but I'm willing and I'm wanting to know and learn to be able to support you.
Mhm.
I think as clinicians, we need to be well versed and well educated on veteran services and local veteran services. So when they do come in, knowing that it's not just mental health, but it's also our job and our privilege to help serve them and get them connected with resources, because that's going to be a big part of the mental health healing, is getting them connected to and helping them reach the resources they need outside of the therapy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love that. I loved how you both said, um, in different ways, really building rapport and listening. And I think that can be taken, and asking questions. That is from a clinician therapy standpoint, but also just a person to person. Like, I think that's something that's really lacking in our society today, is everybody wants to feel like they're important and they're being listened to and their story matters. And so what you said, Femi, about just asking questions about, like, and being there to listen. So what are some of the good questions or things to not say? Like I know that if I was, I mean, I am probably a little too nosy sometimes about things, but when I go to a party, I don't like to just talk about football or the weather. Like, that drives me bananas. I want to know about you, but I do wonder if there are things that you shouldn't say. Like, I would guess that you probably shouldn't say, tell me about your most difficult day in Iraq. But like, what are some really good questions people can ask just to begin a conversation that shows that you are thoughtful and considerate and want to know more?
Sorry, you broke in most of those. You were going in and out.
Oh no, I'm so sorry. Um, so basically, like, what are some good questions to ask to kind of break the ice, to be able to show someone that you're genuinely interested and you're not just trying to make conversation?
Okay. I mean, for me, it's just like, oh, you were in the military. How was that like? You know, like what's the lifestyle like? You know, were you on a ship? Tell me about your ship. Like just like those intriguing questions about the military, right? Because there's some questions that are asked. They're like, hey, while you were in the military, have you killed anybody? Have you shot anybody? And it's like, no. Yes, I don't know. Like, you know, even if you have, like, why would you? It's a traumatic. It could be a traumatic thing,
Yeah.
you know. So those are things that you could stay away from. But just ask about the lifestyle, how it was, you know, because if anything, it'll be nostalgic for them to actually talk about it, right? Like I like talking about my experience with boot camp, my experience with me graduating the day of 9/11, like me being on an aircraft carrier, me being in San Diego, you know, and different countries that I visited,
Mhm.
you know. So just ask about the military, just the military,
Yeah.
you know, and then it can slowly turn into a personal thing,
Mhm.
right? Because they're not gonna
No.
feel comfortable. Shit, I know I won't feel like you broke again. So I know I'm not going to talk about like my personal experience, you know, but I may lead to that because I'm talking about every other thing that I've experienced in the military. Um, like automatically when people find out that I'm a veteran, it's like, oh, thank you for your service. I hate that statement. Like that, I feel like 70% of veterans hate that statement because it seems like just a generic textbook thing to say whenever you meet somebody that's served.
Mhm.
So it turns into something that's not even sincere, you know. Um
What is something better to say in those like quick situations where you maybe see someone who is wearing a uniform or um you or Veterans Day where you
I
know
mean,
someone like what
you
do you
could
say?
like I appreciate your sacrifice, you know, that's something, you
Mhm.
know, because taking that oath and going into something that's that unknown that could be dangerous is a sacrifice. And you
Sure.
know, so it's and people join for different reasons. So and saying thank you for your service, like that means I'm doing it for you, but I was actually doing it for me. And I'm
Mhm.
sacrificing this time. I'm sacrificing a lot my like time with family. Some people have kids and they join the military and they go out to sea. It's a sacrifice. So
Mm.
saying something that, oh yeah, I appreciate your sacrifice just shows that, you know,
See that.
you see them. Yes,
Mhm.
exactly.
Mhm.
Not, you know, the generic statement, but that's how I see it.
I love that.
Do you have anything to add, Teressa?
Yeah, I agree with Femi. Keeping in mind that a lot of things that the veterans went through and they achieved and completed, and even especially combat questions, they can't discuss with you.
Mhm.
For a lot of security reasons, they can't discuss with you. And one thing I learned about working with people in trauma is you don't never want to knock on their door of trauma and open it if you're not ready to receive and help them with it. So while you're inviting somebody to share a traumatic experience to feed your curiosity, you could be opening a deep wound for them. And are you going to be able to be there to heal it for them once you do?
Mhm. Yeah, and that's a really good point. And so we may have to spend a whole new episode how to show concern but not
Yeah.
knock on that door and open
Yeah.
it up because
Yeah.
I know that civilian or people who are not clinicians like myself don't really know how to do that and or aren't qualified to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that that is part of the hesitation from of asking those personal questions is that you don't want to ever get into that situation. So people will just shy away from that at all and they'll talk about civilian things. But I think you guys really brought up a point, both from just a military standpoint and then also just being human. Um, Ask the curious questions because it really shows people that you care about who they are as human beings, and you care about their experience throughout their life. I have,
I was
oh yeah,
gonna add
please go
one
ahead.
more thing. And also civilian life and with mental health, never say I understand. Refrain from that statement around veterans. Don't use a lot of clinical jargon. And instead of inviting them to tell you about the trauma, invite them to tell you about their overall experience and let them decide if they want to go there. Ask them, what do you think it is that I should know that would help me understand you better and your experience better in our work together? Instead of asking those detailed trauma questions. And you can do that as a civilian too. Hey, how was it for you? What do you need right now? And I think if you start asking those questions, they'll open up and they'll discuss and they'll build a rapport and share with you accordingly how they feel. And you'll get some of that other information that may be more traumatic. But coming in just, I'm just wanting to know about you, your experience, and what you need right now. You'll get a lot of information from that.
I love that. I love how you put that. And we have talked a lot about what is not working right. What are some of the struggles, mental health struggles, suicide, things like that. But what I know for sure is that there's so much richness that people from the military bring to civilian life that we often don't talk about. So in our last few minutes, I would love to hear from you. What are some of the secret sauce that military people really bring into civilian world and corporate world? Because there's all this conversation about like corporations, we hire military, and I don't know if they do or they don't, but I think there is such a richness of experience and training that we're not really capitalizing on as a society. So what are some of those things? I would love for you to share that with me, the audience, just so people know like what to look out for and why it's so important to bring these people, really integrate them well into society.
I see Femi's face, so I'm gonna take the first part because I know he got some deep sauce that he's gonna bring and tell us. So for me, I think having veterans in the civilian workforce, the secret sauce is they bring a lot of skill sets. You have to be very adaptable in the military. They bring a lot of resilience. They're gonna be on time because you have to be on time in the military. So they're gonna be on time for your civilian positions and jobs. Look how Femi's looking. And then they're very detail oriented. They know how to break down a project and be very, very detail oriented, task by task. They know how to accept feedback.
That's a big one.
Yes. And then what I love most about the twofold thing, what I love about having veterans in the civilian workforce is that they bring a boldness and a confidence and a real raw authenticity to the workplace. You know, in the military work, there is not a lot of room for PC and, you know, being politically correct and stuff around because things got to get done and it's, you know, critical things that have to get done. So straight to the point, it's honest, it's raw. And I think we could do that a little bit more in the civilian world to just kind of cut to the chase, get to the point. And I think they do a really good job at being concise and thorough, authentic and raw. Take it away, Femi. I see your face.
I love it. So adaptable, resilient, bold, and confident.
Yes. Detail oriented, on time.
Detail oriented, on time. What else, Femi?
So I mean, she took some of my stuff, but
you should have stepped up and gone first.
No, but I let her have it. So I mean, being on time is being late. You have to be 15 minutes early to be on time.
My husband says that. He's like, if you're not early, you're late. And I'm like, I don't think that's how time works. But go ahead. I was never in the military.
Like when you have to make muster readily, like, you know, and if you're there at the time, they pull you out. Like you should have been here 15 minutes prior. Like, So the military has basically done like corporate America or just a workforce a service where they've already handled the core the core behavior of efficiency for you, right? They've done all the hard work. All you have to do is just have a plan and say, hey, this is the system, and just insert that into the, and it will work because it's one of the rigor, leadership, attention to detail, honor, courage, commitment. There's a lot of to the point situations where um there's no like moving around. Like you have a conversation, like this is what we're gonna do, that's how we're gonna do it. Just efficiency, basically like structure. Like if there's a system in place and we understand it and we know how to get the most effective way to actually, produce, we will do that, right? Like especially when I'm doing therapy and like my notes and everything, I'm like, okay, I've already categorized every single person that I've already seen, right? And I'm like, okay, this template is for this person, this template is for this person. And adaptability, if something comes up, we learn how to run with the punches. Like we don't get our feelings hurt. Like, when we're in these meetings and we just sit there like, okay, after this, we're gonna have to do what happens, like, what we're supposed to do, right? It's kind of like just pushing through because following chain of command, talking to immediate supervisor instead of like somebody above them, the respect, it's there's a lot of stuff that comes with it. So having a military veteran as an employee is definitely a perk because it's something that's going to help that company or help that employer, scale in a way where you can just leave them there and not worry about them and just be like, hey, are you good? Okay, cool. I'll come back next week. And like things will get done because we'll figure it out. We'll figure out a system and, just give us the blueprint. Like we've learned to adapt and we've done worse.
Yeah, I love it. It really sounds like character building. It is, you hire the character, you teach the skill. And I think that's so, I love resilient and adaptable. I think those are
worse than what we did in the military. So
well, thank you so much for your time today. I have learned so much. Is there anything else that you would like to leave us with? Pearls of wisdom. Femi, you go first.
Wisdom. I would say if there was a time where like any of my kids or any young person was considering joining the military, it would be something that would be highly considered because it definitely does make you it gives you an upgrade in a way where you have certain tools that takes almost a lifetime.
Yep. Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that like when I was 25, like there's a lot of stuff that I've learned, I experienced, and I did. And speaking to like a 35, 40-year-old, and I have so much more experience just in life and how I handle myself as a man because of the military. So I would say if you want your kids to or any young person to grow up into somebody, to get a head start, just overall in life, like in here, like military helped me out. So, and that was a tough case to crack. So,
and look how well you turned out and are turning out. Thanks, Femi. What about you, Teressa?
So my wisdom and nugget is to draw closer to those who have served, whether you're family members, whether they're your community members, draw closer. This Veterans Day, I encourage people not only to do the barbecue and enjoy being time off, but actually get out in your community, actually do something online, social media, advocate for support, learn some resources, reach out to a veteran, make a personal phone call, really reach out and show support. I have so much admiration for this population because I actually found my voice working with the military. A lot of people say it's a very restrictive environment, but for me, watching the sacrifice and the service of those made me want to work even harder as a clinician, as a mental health professional, as even a woman, a civilian. It made me want to just go harder. And they really, truly showed me what resilience looks like.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of great benefits of knowing someone who served, speaking to someone who served, being around someone who served. Don't avoid them. Draw near to them, have conversations, be human. And that's what they want. That's what they want. We should not make them feel isolated, but we should, wrap around them. And so I thank everyone for your sacrifice. Femi, I'm learning. I'm not saying that statement anymore. Thank you, Femi, for your sacrifice. And again, this Veterans Day, have a purpose with it. Have a purpose. Yes.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for both of your sacrifices and your time today. You are a wealth of knowledge. So thank you very much. And thank you so much for joining us today, those who listened or watched. If you have questions, please be sure and put it in the chat. If we talked about resources, we will put them, link them also. And I hope you join us next month for our next Heading Health Speaker Series. Thanks again. Bye.
Bye, guys.